Okay. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Hey skaters, we're back with another episode of Welcome to the Streets with Ghoulie. That's me, and we're here again at Fargo Skate Park. In today's episode, we're going to be going over down ledges and down rails. It sounds a little spooky, but I promise it's not that bad. You just got to give it a try and full commit, and I'm going to break it down a little bit for you to give you the confidence you need to give it your first attempt. So what is a down rail or a down ledge? We've already gone over how to do front sides and different grind variations on flat ledges and flat rails, so it's going to be very much the same, except a down ledge and a down rail is something that's at an angle. So instead of approaching something that is parallel with the floor, it now is going to be on an angle with the floor. So you're just going to have to approach it a little bit differently, and your weight disbursement and placement is going to be a little bit different. And your commitment level is going to be a little bit different because you really do have to fully commit to these, because the chances of something going wrong or injury is a little bit higher than if you're skating a flat rail or a flat ledge, because you have more momentum carrying you, and usually there's a higher distance that you're going to be falling. So of course there's going to be different heights of down ledges and down rails. They're not all going to be the same, especially if you're out skating in the wild streets. There are going to be so many different variations. They're not going to be the same because they're not made for skating. They're usually things that are made for the public to use. They're usually alongside stair sets or gaps. And so they're not made for skating. They usually need to be a little bit altered to be skated, like using wax and things like that. So they're all going to be different, so not one is going to be the same. If you're at a skate park, sometimes you're going to see a bump to ledge or a bump to rail, and that's when you have an incline taking you up to the obstacle, which helps a little bit carry your momentum and really pop you up on the ledge or the rail. And other times it's going to be a flat surface onto a down rail or a down ledge, which is going to be all the jumping and height is going to come from your own body's power, and you're not going to have any obstacles to assist you. Before we get into this, I recommend that you check out the previous video we did on front sides on ledges and rails, because that foundation of skill sets is really going to come in handy with doing down ledges and down rails. So on today's episode, we're mostly going to be focusing on how to do front sides on down ledges and down rails, but I mostly am just trying to get you to understand what the difference is between skating flat obstacles versus obstacles that are on a decline, because you can definitely take different grind variations to these obstacles. Talking about the front side is really going to help you understand how the, mechanics of it all works. We'll drop a link to the front side video if you haven't checked it out already. So there are a few important differences with skating down ledges and rails that are important versus skating flat ledges and rails. Most of it is going to be about commitment. Because of the decline and the angle that these obstacles are at, it's extremely important that you fully commit if you're going to attempt it. If you don't fully commit, something can go wrong. And so many times I see this, even in my own skating, especially when I first started, that a lot of people would get scared already when they have committed to making an attempt, and then they bail halfway through, and that's when things can go wrong. Make sure you're really confident in the skill that you're about to attempt onto a down ledge or rail, regardless of what the grind is. Make sure you're really comfortable with that trick before you give it a go, and when you approach it, fully commit, because a lot of times it's worse to bail than to just fully commit. The next things I want to talk about is head, shoulders, knees, and toes. So with your head and your eyes, you want to make sure you're spotting where you want to actually get onto the rail or the ledge. A lot of times when you get up to a rail or a ledge and it might seem a little bit too tall for you, you're not going to be jumping on right where it starts. You're actually going to be jumping on usually a couple feet past that. So I always gauge if it's something that is too tall for me or the right height for me by gauging 2 feet ahead from where the obstacle starts, because that's usually where my feet are going to get on by the time I actually jump and land on it. And that's where I kind of gauge the height and if it's a comfortable height level for me. So make sure that the height's not too tall for what you're comfortable with, but also keep in mind you're not measuring from the top of the obstacle, you're measuring from a couple feet out, because when we roll up to something, we jump, we're already taking a few feet or a couple of feet ahead from where we think we're going to be. And once you find the spot that you think you're going to be actually locking in on, you want to focus on that when you approach the obstacle. Make sure you're looking where you want to land. As we've discussed in other videos, you want to make sure that you have a good solid foundation in your body, your stance is nice, as we've already gone over. You want to approach it from the appropriate angle. I tend to come at things at about a 45-degree angle and even slightly less. Once you rotate onto the obstacle in whichever direction you need to go for the trick, you want to make sure that you have your shoulders kind of aimed in the direction that you're grinding. I tend to be slightly tilted forward. If I'm doing front sides, my shoulders are slightly cocked to the direction that I am sliding. If I'm gonna 180 off of it, for example, you'll see my shoulders slightly start to rotate the opposite way so that I can make the rotation off and land. But your shoulders are usually gonna be kind of your center, so you want it to kind of be centered with where your body is going to end up once you get off the obstacle. Now with your knees and feet, this is where things get a little bit tricky because everyone skates different here. I asked a couple of my friends about where they place their weight, if it's in the front, center, or back, and also how their feet usually are when they're doing ledges and rails, especially in a front side, and all of us are a little bit different. I tend to keep my weight a little bit forward in my front foot, and my friend likes to keep her weight a little bit in her back foot, and then my other friend likes to try to stay centered as he can. So that's where it's a little bit different and kind of comes with just practice and getting comfortable with it. It usually happens just all on its own without you having to overthink it. It just is something that happens naturally. It is important to make sure that if you're doing a front side specifically on a ledge or a rail, that your feet are in the right place, that they're not cocked this way or this way, because that can cause your feet to slip out. So you want to make sure that they are very much perpendicular with the obstacle. But it's really important that you keep a nice bend in your knees to keep your center of gravity lower, that you have a nice centered stance, whatever stance that is for you. Make sure that it's something that is solid and centered and that you feel comfortable with before you start giving these obstacles a go. I also like to use my arms quite a bit for these. The arms really help carry my momentum up, and I try to jump a little bit higher than I think I need to for the obstacle, so that way I guarantee that I land on the obstacle and that I'm not clipping the obstacle with my feet and missing, but I'm actually overshooting so that I'm for sure going to land on the top. And then the landing with these are also really important. So as I've already talked a bunch in other videos about absorbing landing, that's going to be very crucial here, because since skating a down rail or a down ledge is going to create more momentum and creates a faster landing for you, absorbing the impact is going to be really important, so that way you're not injuring yourself, you roll away from the trick, and that you don't just hit the ground and kind of fall flat. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope these tips were helpful for you and gave you the confidence to conquer that down rail or down ledge that you've been having your eye on. If you have any other tips or advice for people, please leave them in the comments, because it's always helpful to hear from other people, as everyone learns differently and has different advice. Your support is always appreciated here at Moxi, and I'll see you in the next episode.